same thing it did before when it wouldn't play.
Oh, well, that's the audio there. No, I think that was the new one. That's the January.
Generate.
Man, navigation.
Say what?
You working your way around, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know which one it is.
I hit that list button. It'll tell you the latest date right there. Click on that button. And then go list. Go back and hit details. Go back up and hit details instead of list. Details. Okay. That's gonna be it right there. March 16th.
I was having such a hard time playing it.
You know, you get where you playing.
On
You can
Windows.
right-click on it.
Windows Media.
You can right click on it. Give you that option to play it. Play it with. Quick time play.
No, it ain't playing on that one either. I don't know what kind of format y'all recorded this in, but it ain't gonna work on my computer. Thank you, baby.
Hello. Please enter your 6-digit conference code. This conference. We will now connect you to your call. There are 2 attendees in this conference. Your host has joined. Conference mute. Hello. Please enter your 6-digit conference code. Welcome to that. We will now connect you to your call. There are 2 attendees in this conference. Host has joined. Conference muted. Access code accepted. There are 2 participants in the conference. All participants are muted and they can
You can You all bear with us a moment. Since we late, we're gonna just play the opening. Do something else later. Yes. I don't know what this thing did. Are you sure it wasn't no virus or nothing on this thing? It's not letting me go to the commercial. It's not letting me play nothing. It's already set for Windows Media Player, and it ain't opening, and this didn't happen until I put this thing in here. This ain't making no sense. I know it. It ain't no operation going on in the background.
Just start with the task manager. It's something over there. Type in task manager.
What you doing? You all bear with us. We're gonna start in a moment.
Brothers and sisters, are you tired of reading the Holy Scriptures and not really understanding what you read? And if you're reasonably sure, if you have tested that what you feel you know with someone that has a different view than your own, then let's talk with one another. Then let's reason with one another on a scriptural discussion with the Son of Man every Wednesday at 9 p.m., Friday at 9 p.m., and Sunday at 12 noon on WHBR TV, Detroit Live, 88.1 FM, WHBR, and Comcast Cable. Why don't you call and discuss the Holy Bible, and if you have one, the Holy Quran, and come to an agreement about the Holy Scriptures and their true meaning? You can call it live on the air at area code 313-868-4336, 313-868-0342, or 313-868-0351. That's 313-868-4326, 313-868-0342, or 313-868-0351. And now, let's go live with a scriptural discussion with the Son of Man.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, the Truthful, and the Most Just, I greet you all once again who are hungry and thirsty for the natural and spiritual truth. I greet you all with the greeting words of peace. May Allah's Salam Alaikum. Before I get into the January 6th report, I have some other things that I want to show you that I just happened to catch on the news this evening when I came in. And before I do that, I want to give those who have questions or arguments or whatnot that they wanted to put forth. You're welcome to press *6 on your keypad if you're in the 717 conference room. If you're in the 601 conference room, press 5*. *6 in 717, 5* if you're in the 601, and we will entertain your questions or arguments. And if there are no questions or arguments, then I have something else here that I wanted to show you. It was, let's see here. Lawrence O'Donnell. I was looking at it. Beg your pardon? You don't hear me in the 717? Brother Michael, you see me in there? Well, you know, they should, you know, Brother Michael would have told me if I wasn't in one of them. So that's on them. That ain't on us. Okay. Huh? Okay. Well, you got my attention now. Did he have something? Was that it? He was just trying to tell us that he couldn't hear us, but he can hear us now. Okay.
It's gonna be massive.
Beg your pardon? You hear who talking? Well, tell Brother Samuel, I can hear you in the room there. You might want to press *6 and mute yourself out again. Brother Michael, you hear him? In there? You say it looked like his call dropped. Okay, but you can hear me in there. Brother Jamar, you hear me in there? Okay. Okay, what about now? That better? Okay. All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
May wa alaikum ala salam. I just noticed that I hadn't put my phone on speaker up here. So that's one of the reasons why you all couldn't.
I thought it was on my ear.
No.
Senator, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Clarification on, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Recently, you were speaking about in making of the arch deceiver. When one of the primary purposes of making the arch deceiver was to make someone who was a arch deceiver in order to help bring forth the Mahdi. Now, in bringing forth this arch deceiver, was it necessary to have a supreme arch deceiver or a single mind representing the arch deceiver, or is that more?
Well, first of all, there is no supreme arch deceiver. When you look at the term supreme, unless you using it mighty loosely, because there's only one supreme being. And if we had to teach him how to be a deceiver, then he never will be supreme because we taught him. Do you understand? So, but one of our gods, Yaqub, who was the supreme one at the time, he knew he needed to make the devil in order to make us complete, because he told his people, as the messenger hinted to it when he said he told his people, go out and deceive all that you can for 6,000 years. And after 6,000 years, your brother from the east will come and he will eat you up, meaning destroy you, your ability to deceive. And so that was a little hint that the presence of the devil would create the need for the coming of the just one, for the coming of one who could not be deceived by him and who would overcome him. And so that's why, Elijah had to be sent first, and Elijah had to come and raise that one from the dead. And so that's me. And, that is basically what the teachings about the making of the devil was. He was made to create something that, or someone that we had to wrestle with. You notice in Genesis, Jacob was wrestling with a man, with an angel. And when the day was breaking, the angel told him, let me go. And Jacob told him, he said, I'm not going to let you go until you bless my soul. So, we wasn't talking about wrestling physically with a man. we've been wrestling with evil. And so, as the book says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. We gave them power and dominion over the fowl of the air, fish of the sea, cattle, and the earth, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. We gave them dominion over that. And so we've been wrestling with him ever since. Do you understand? And so now he have to let us go, because you in the Sabbath day. Day is breaking. And so I come to remove that curse from him as we promised. And that's why the messenger told you all in 74, he said, if God wants to continue to let them live on the earth, that's him and God. You just get that part that he give you and don't worry over his. And so a lot of people upset with me for that very reason. It's because I'm offering salvation to white people too. You know, you can't on the one hand claim innocence when it comes to us, black people, and say that white people did this to us. They made us all of this, made us this kind of crazy people. And so it's not our fault. Well, if we made them devils, then is it their fault? So, offsetting penalties. So, and if I'm not going to blame you for being niggardly and hateful and all of that kind of thing before I spoke to you, then I can't blame them for being devils before I spoke to them. Do you understand? Okay, so everybody starts with a clean slate with me. The messenger told you that. He said first thing he did when he come, he declared all of us righteous. Meaning what? Nothing on the record. Nothing against you will be held against you for the past 6,000 years of your deeds and actions. Only thing that's going to be held against you is how you acted after I spoke to you. Now, that is what's being recorded now. Okay. So, any more questions before I continue? I thought I would let you see this to show you that this is these things that's happening. It's not getting better for these people. It's getting worse.
It's going to be massive. A lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. Those are the words of someone who has seen and heard and evaluated all of the evidence of Donald Trump's interference in the 2020 election in Georgia. It's going to be massive. That statement was made by one of the members of the special grand jury whose report has recommended the indictment of more than a dozen people in Georgia. And we know that number because the first member of the grand jury to be publicly interviewed, the foreperson, Emily Kors, revealed that number in interviews that she did last month. 5 other unnamed grand jurors met together in a conference room with 2 Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporters and have revealed much more that should be deeply disturbing and worrisome for Donald Trump. Prosecutors in Georgia and in New York City now appear to be in a race with history. They both appear to be on the verge of being the first prosecutor in history to bring criminal charges against a former president of the United States. No one is suggesting that the charges that could be brought in Manhattan will be massive. Current expectation in Manhattan is for a possible 2-count indictment of Donald Trump for falsifying business records and possibly violating state tax law or violating state campaign finance law. Such an indictment will surely be historic. It will be important. It could make Donald Trump a convicted felon. But such an indictment will not be, by any description, massive. What happens in Georgia is going to be massive, according to one of the grand jurors. The grand jurors are allowed by Georgia law to reveal everything except what was said in their deliberations among themselves. They could reveal the names of everyone they recommended for indictment, but none of the jurors have been willing to go that far. They did tell the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about some new evidence that has never been reported before, and it seems that everyone in Georgia was recording their phone calls with Donald Trump. In some states, it is against the law to record a telephone call without alerting the other party to the phone call that you are recording. Georgia is not one of those states. And this is one of those moments where we can be grateful for Donald Trump's impermeable ignorance and relentless stupidity. Because Donald Trump picked up telephones in the White House and called Georgia, where it is perfectly legal for the recipient of his phone calls to record those phone calls without telling him.
Now, let me say this to you. Anyone who lives their life practicing wickedness is stupid. I'm just telling you. I mean, that's tantamount to going to someone, asking them to teach you and train you the wrong way. How to be a doctor, how to be a pilot, how to be anything that you're trying to be, to do it right, but you go and purposely get somebody to, to practice. When you practice a thing, you learn what you're practicing. See, however you practice, that's where your lesson, that's your lesson. Do you understand? You get the reward, the understanding, based on what you've been doing. So to live your life wrong and to practice doing wrong is to purposely make yourself stupid. Now you think about it, and you see the truth of what I'm saying. You wouldn't purposely get an engineering degree to go out and practice that field, practice that vocation. If it was in electrical engineering, you wouldn't purposely, if you were sane, you would not purposely go and try to learn how to hook up electricity the wrong way. Do you understand? I mean, I look at people, and this man, what was his name that used to have the rest of the story? Paul Harvey. When Paul Harvey said, the wise man is not the man who learns to use his own mind, but the wise man is the man who learns to use all of the minds around him. Do you understand? Paul Harvey didn't just think that up. The scripture says, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. What is counsel? What is a counselor? It's a mind, someone you drawn from someone else's mind. You are looking at someone else to give you advice or counsel you in certain areas. Okay. As we look at this world, what are you doing when you look at a other person, what someone else did, and watch the results of it and how it affected them? You are actually being counseled if you know how to extract a lesson, not from your own, especially from your own mistakes, but from other people's mistakes, from your own successes, but from other people's successes. When you look at people who you notice people look at rich people as being successful. A rich man is not successful just because he is rich. If that's all you got going for yourself is you done got rich, well, how did you get rich? That is just as important as being rich. How did you get there? Because if you got there wrongly, then you are not crowned with what you would have thought you would have, which is peace of mind and contentment. You see, many people think that if I had everything I wanted, if I wasn't wanting for nothing, I'd be happy. There's a whole lot of people that is in positions right now that they don't actually want for anything. All they have to do is live their life. And yet, because they have either they've looked at the wrong model for success, and so they don't recognize the success that they already have. Do you understand? And that's how you lose it. Remember, I told you, if you don't know the value of what you have, you soon won't have it. Sometimes people can talk you into just throwing it away because you did not recognize the gravity of it or the value of it. Do you understand? Yeah. This is what I remember the messenger said once. He said, it does not surprise me when a person leaves Christianity to come to Islam. He said, what surprises me is when someone leaves Islam to go to Christianity. that is a surprise to him. Because in actuality, you don't actually leave Islam. You actually, when you say this ain't for me, what you actually are doing is you are manifesting that when you were saying that you were in Islam, you were really not. Do you understand? It's time for me to make you understand that you ain't fooling me. You fooling yourself. There are some men who say we believe in Allah in the last day, and they are not really believers. They seek to deceive Allah and those who believe, and they deceive only themselves, and they perceive not. And there it is, right there. You know, everybody that says that I'm a believer, that does not mean that they are a true believer. People say a lot of things. You've heard people say, why did you tell them that? Oh, I was just being nice. I didn't believe that stuff. You know, I've seen people do that. And they do it all the time. So eventually, the truth outs. You know, ain't nothing that's hidden that don't eventually get manifest. Do you understand? They got civilizations that have been buried under the sands of Arabia and buried under the ground in other parts of the earth. But because the earth is constantly renewing stuff, this stuff is brought back to the surface. It's you see it again, and it's unearthing It's being unearthed by somebody going digging it up, or it unearths itself because of erosion and that kind of thing. Do you understand? Okay.
Excuse me, Donald.
Yes.
When you played that video, it sounded like it was coming through twice. I don't know. I could hear an echo behind it. I don't know if that was another microphone.
Well, okay.
Now, we already know that resulted in what is now the most famous and notorious recorded telephone call in the history of telecommunications.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
That was, of course, Donald Trump's call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who testified about that call to the grand jury. The grand jurors told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about another recorded telephone call. They, quote, heard a recording of a phone call Trump placed to late Georgia House Speaker David Ralston, in which the president asked the fellow Republican to convene a special session of the legislature to overturn Democrat Joe Biden's narrow victory in Georgia. One juror said Ralston proved to be an amazing politician. The speaker basically cut the president off. He said, I will do everything in my power that I think is appropriate. He just basically took the wind out of the sails. The juror said, well, thank you, you know, is all the president could say. David Ralston did not call a special session of the legislature to overturn the election. David Ralston died in November of last year. But thanks to his recording of Donald Trump's phone call, the most important evidence that David Ralston could provide to that grand jury of Donald Trump's criminal interference in the election lives after him. Think about that. For 2 years and almost 3 months now, we have all known that Donald Trump made a phone call to Georgia Secretary of State asking to find 11,000 votes, and that was patently illegal on its face. But only Donald Trump knew that he also made a similarly criminal phone call to Georgia's Speaker of the House of Representatives, David Ralston. And then, in November of last year, David Ralston died. And Donald Trump might have gotten a few more minutes of sleep that night thinking, that's one witness who can never testify against him. But David Ralston had the presence of mind to take Donald Trump's phone call to him, and so now David Ralston is, in effect, testifying against Donald Trump from the grave. The audio recording made by David Ralston could, in and of itself, represent an individual count in a larger indictment of Donald Trump. If Donald Trump committed a crime in his phone call to David Ralston, it is a different crime than the one he may have committed in his phone call to Secretary of State Raffensperger. If each of those phone calls are criminal, then they each represent two separate crimes in what would be a multi-count indictment against Donald Trump recommended by the special grand jury, which could include other counts. And if true, that would truly be, in the words of the jurors, massive. The grand jurors were emotional in their interview about the harm that Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and the rest of Donald Trump's liars inflicted on people by the lies they told about the election. Harm to individuals and to all the American people. Among the most compelling witnesses, various jurors said, were Fulton County poll workers Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss, who had received death threats after being singled out by Trump and his then attorney Rudy Giuliani. Another mentioned Eric Coomer, the one-time executive for Dominion Voting Systems, who left his job after being vilified. Also mentioned was Tricia Raffensperger, the wife of Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who broke down When describing the vitriol and threats leveled at her, one juror said, "I was pretty emotional throughout the whole thing." A juror said, "I wouldn't cry in front of any of the other witnesses, but when I would get in my car, I was like, I just left that and I have to go do my job now? I just know things that are hard to know." A grand juror crying in the car after hearing what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani did to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss.
There is nowhere I feel safe. Nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you?
Yes, a lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
Were a lot of these threats and vile comments racist in nature?
A lot of them were racist, a lot of them were just hateful. But yes, sir.
One of the members of the grand jury cried in the car after hearing testimony like that, and after hearing testimony from the Georgia Secretary of State's wife, Tricia Raffensperger, who testified to this grand jury, which was not widely reported. She described the death threats that she received from Trump supporters while she and her husband were still deeply mourning the death of their son. Grand jurors who were brought to tears by testimony like that have sent a message to the people who caused that pain, to Tricia Raffensperger and to Ruby Freeman and to Shay Moss. And that message is the recommendation of the indictment of more than a dozen people who were pushing the lies that caused that pain. David Perdue was one of Georgia's Republican senators running for re-election in a runoff campaign in December of 2020, which he lost to Senator John Ossoff. The grand jurors revealed that David Perdue also wanted the Georgia legislature to convene a special session to illegally overturn the presidential election. Quote, Perdue, a key Trump ally, was asked about a meeting at Truist Park in December 2020, during which he told Governor Brian Kemp he wanted the legislature to convene a special session to challenge Biden's victory, a juror said. Governor Kemp was also a witness to this grand jury, so the grand jury has heard testimony on both sides of that conversation, which might or might not be one of the elements in one of the indictments recommended by that special grand jury. One of the most horrible and enduring myths that surrounds the presidency is the notion that America would be torn apart and harmed if we ever subjected a president or a former president to criminal prosecution. There is absolutely no evidence at all for that myth, because we have never subjected a president or former president to criminal prosecution.
Now, actually the very opposite of that is true. It would prove to the world in plain sight that the United States truly is a nation of laws and not of men, like they profess to be. Do you understand that no one that takes that oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, and notice how it's left there, whether they are foreign or domestic, whether they live outside of the United States or whether they are a citizen of the United States. The Constitution is the authority, the final authority over them. and they must defend it and uphold it. If he fails to do that as President of the United States, he took an oath to uphold it, and he broke his oath. Remember Rusty Bowers? He told him, "You asking me to break my oath? I'm not going to break my oath. I'm not going to violate my oath." Huh? You still got some people, white people and black people, whose word, when they give their word on something, they mean it. You see? That man been in Hollywood too long. The land of actors, people giving their word and for fictitious characters. You can start thinking that that's life. That ain't life. That's a movie. In real life, when you give your word, there are consequences for breaking that word. Do you understand? So, as Lawrence was saying here, you know, they got the myth going that somehow a president, if you charge a president and with criminal charge, that would destroy the country some kind of way, but it wouldn't.
Possibly because of the strength of that myth. But that was the rationale that President Gerald Ford used when he pardoned the man who made him president, Richard Nixon, 1 month after Nixon resigned the presidency, thereby making his vice president, Gerald Ford, the president. Gerald Ford claimed, based entirely on his own imagination, that the pardon he was issuing to the former president for any and all crimes committed while Nixon was president of the United States was for the good of the country. The pardon wasn't for Nixon, it was for us. It was for the good of the country. The special grand jurors who know everything that Donald Trump did in Georgia to try to overturn the presidential election do not appear to believe that it's good for the country to cover up or ignore or pardon the crimes of former presidents of the United States. One grand juror said, "I tell my wife, if every person in America knew every single word of information we knew, this country would not be divided as it is right now." A lot's going to come out sooner or later, one of the jurors said, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive.
Now that's deep. Now this other young man here, he puts let me see here. I look at some of his shows online. Is, you know, and he tells it pretty straight. And he usually have people on there that well, I'll let you be the judge.
You're watching the Legal Breakdown. So Glenn, I want to direct your attention to a few stunning new quotes from the jurors in the Georgia case, the Fulton County case against Donald Trump, and that was in the Georgia Journal-Constitution. One juror said, quote, "I tell my wife, if every person in America knew every single word of information that we know, this country would not be divided as it is right now." And finally, here's the kicker here. A lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. In your professional opinion, is this the kind of language used if an exoneration is in the works?
Yeah, I think it's unlikely the jurors were talking about a massive exoneration of Donald Trump because the grand jury believes he's done nothing wrong. I'll tell you, this is both really ominous for Trump and his criminal associates, and it's also a really good read. I hope everybody will read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article, because rarely do you get this kind of insight into what was going on in the grand jury. I, as a prosecutor, got to see the inside of the grand jury all the time, but rarely does the general public get to see it. And when these grand jurors are talking about just how powerful the evidence is, how upsetting the evidence is, multiple grand jurors said they would sit in their cars at the end of the day and cry. Why would they cry? Because of what some of these people who were being investigated, presumably Trump and company, were doing to everyday citizens, to people like Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the election workers in Georgia, who were not only vilified, but they had their lives threatened because Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani lied about them, claiming they're, stealing Trump votes, which was absolutely absurd. I mean, you can tell by reading this really deep dive piece that these grand jurors, took their work deadly seriously. They were really, I think, impacted by what they were seeing. And, there's another quote in the article that they said, it was incredibly important to us to get this right. And when they close out the article with one of the grand jurors saying, what's about to come is going to be massive, it's going to be massive, I'm starting to believe, Brian, that we're likely to see a big old RICO conspiracy indictment, not just sort of a series of more discrete, standalone indictments of individuals. I think that's reinforced by what we heard from the forewoman, Emily Kors, when she said, look, you can expect to see more than a dozen people charged in this case. So I think we're going to see a big old conspiracy indictment issued by the grand jury after Fani Willis has done her work.
Yeah, and just to build on what you said earlier about Shay Moss and the whole issue with the elections workers, that part, I remember that was the one part of the hearings that really just kind of broke my heart, because these are just people who are not only haven't done anything wrong, but actually are doing their civic duty, are making our elections run, and just for the crime of being there. It really is amazing to see what Donald Trump and the rest of his acolytes, like what they will torch in their quest to just gain power, and whose lives they will just run roughshod over, and how many just completely innocent people's lives were turned upside down just for this fairy tale that he's trying to concoct with the help of these people who just don't have any scruples, any shame, and deserve everything that's coming to them. Glenn, there was one other quote that I just want to reiterate here, and that is, if everyone knew every word of information that we know, this country wouldn't be so divided. Now, that line from a juror in the Georgia case suggests that one of the two sides of the political spectrum is being lied to. I don't think that we have to sit here and pretend to not know which side that is. What were your thoughts on that line in particular?
Yeah, it was a very telling line, and I think what the grand juror was communicating is there's the truth, and they got a whole lot of evidence that was truthful and honest and accurate, and then there were a bunch of lies. And they actually put the witnesses that they saw in 3 batches. They put the truth-telling witnesses, they put a second category of witnesses who really didn't want to be there. They needed a subpoena to compel their testimony, but once they got there, they told the truth, even if reluctantly. And then the third batch were the people who were most closely aligned to Donald Trump, who were unwilling to tell the truth, or who would just invoke their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. It's pretty clear that the grand jurors were kind of signaling that if everybody could just see the truth and see the lies, then maybe, that would move the needle. Maybe there would only be one view of what really happened. Now, I would hasten to add that might be a little naive, because there are probably some hardcore Trump supporters who are never going to be moved by the truth. But, I thought it was a pretty telling comment by the grand juror.
And just one more point on this. You mentioned that it was so surprising that we're getting this kind of insight, from out of 30,000 foot view, that we're getting this kind of insight into the grand jury. why are we getting this insight? Why is this something that we wouldn't normally see, and yet why are we getting this insight now?
So most jurisdictions have rules, and those rules involve grand jurors not being permitted to ever talk about what went on inside the grand jury unless there was a special order from the judge permitting them to speak. In Georgia, the rules are very different. In Georgia, you can speak about anything that happened inside the grand jury. The only thing you cannot discuss publicly are your deliberations. When it's just the grand jurors privately discussing what the evidence means, who should be indicted, but everything else is fair game. Who testified, what they said, and it's funny because the judge also made clear that they could talk about their recommendations in their report. Interestingly, none of the grand jurors who have given interviews to the media has been willing to talk about precisely what's in the report or who they recommended should be indicted. So they're kind of editing themselves and actually holding back, not necessarily disclosing everything. Under the rules of Georgia, they're permitted to disclose.
Yeah, and I guess we don't really have to, I mean, we already know that Fani Willis is releasing her decision about whether or not to indict imminently, so I guess at this point it really doesn't matter because we'll find out that information soon enough. But you know, it is important to note that they have stayed within the confines of the rules that are being imposed on them. Not to bury the lead here, there is another case that is racing toward indictment. That's the Manhattan District Attorney case about hush money payouts paid to Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels has now confirmed that she met with Manhattan prosecutors investigating Trump's hush money payouts. What does this signal, and also, why is this happening so late in the process? Shouldn't she have been interviewed like among the first people who brought it in?
You know, it's a great question, and it's one that I can't quite answer, but let me start by saying, if what is going to happen in Georgia, according to the grand jurors, is going to be massive, it looks like what's going to happen in New York is going to be modest. It's going to be a more modest set of charges. The fact that Michael Cohen, arguably the most important witness in the hush money payments case, because he is a co-conspirator of Donald Trump, he committed the crimes at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald Trump. So he's undeniably the most important, most valuable witness, and he has now completed his testimony after 2 days of testifying before the grand jury. You know, that signaled that the prosecutors are pretty much at the end of the grand jury investigation. The Stormy Daniels piece is interesting. She actually is a less central witness than you might otherwise expect, because it's really all about what Michael Cohen and Donald Trump together conspired to do to make these payments to Stormy Daniels. So I actually would have expected the prosecutors to have met with Stormy Daniels long ago and probably to have presented her to the grand jury. Why? Well, if we think we're going to call a witness at trial, we definitely want to put them before the grand jury to lock in their testimony. That way, we have a full appreciation of the universe of their testimony, and importantly, it's under oath. So if you move to the trial stage, and that same witness testifies, and, for example, their memory has faded, or for whatever reason their recollection of their testimony is not strong, or they spin us, that's a term of art, when a witness intentionally lies at trial, you can use that grand jury transcript, that sworn testimony, to confront the witness, to impeach the witness, and then you can use whatever the witness said in the grand jury, you can hand it to the trial jury to prove your case. So I was a little surprised that, they're just now getting around to talking with Stormy Daniels. We don't even know if she's been in the grand jury, but I will give them credit for sort of doing things tactically the way they think they ought to be done. So I assume there's a reason that they kind of waited until this late in the game to deal with Stormy Daniels.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you the question that I assume everyone has been asking you, and that is that we have these two cases racing toward indictment concurrently. What do you think we're going to see indictment from first? Do you think we're going to see it from Fulton County, Georgia, or do you think we're going to see it from the Manhattan DA case?
Yeah, impossible to predict. They are both,
thought I could get you on that one.
They're both very close, I think, to being indicted. If I had to bet a buck on my own money, that's my betting limit. I would probably bet a buck on New York being first. and Georgia being second, if only because Georgia is probably going to involve multiple defendants being indicted as part of the conspiracy. That is my strong suspicion at this point, given everything we've learned. And here is what the prosecutor might want to do before dropping that final indictment in Georgia. Fani Willis might want to have her team step to some of these defendants who are about to be indicted and say, look, you've got one last opportunity to avoid being named as a defendant in this conspiracy indictment, and it's if you decide to take responsibility for what you did, maybe we'll give you a reduced charge to plead guilty to, but you will have to truthfully cooperate and testify against any co-defendants about whom you might have incriminating information. So there might be some of that negotiating that still needs to go on before Fani Willis finally drops the indictment. So that's why I think I'm going to stick with New York being the first one out of the blocks to indict Donald Trump.
Well, you know, what's so interesting about that, I find, is that, you know, we out here all just assume that Fani Willis coming forward and saying that an indictment is imminent is for our benefit. But in fact, she could be using that for her own benefit by really using that line to ramp the pressure up on all of these co-conspirators and basically to let them know now is the time to shit or get off the pot. Like, it's now or never, an indictment is imminent, so either you're with us or you're against us. And so we're all like perhaps naively out here expecting like an imminent indictment and assuming that Fani Willis is talking to us as if we need like a reassurance from the district attorney in Fulton County. She may have very well done that just to kind of use it to her own benefit and really put the pressure on these people to either help her or suffer the consequences themselves.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because prosecutors don't typically make any sorts of public statements for the benefit of the public. You're exactly right. We do it for whatever tactical advantage we think, you know, it might have for purposes of our case, where we are and how we're trying to move forward. I will say, once we heard her charging decision was imminent, I think we were all expecting, you know, okay, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and I think that statement is now, what, 5 or 6 weeks in our rearview mirror. So I suspect she's involved in some negotiations right now.
All right. Well, with that said, for anybody watching, if you want to keep on top of both of these cases in Fulton County, Georgia, and in Manhattan, make sure to subscribe to both of our channels. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Taylor Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching A Legal Breakdown.
Yeah, I found that pretty interesting, and so I decided I would let you see that and hear it. I want to now go to page 62, and we are starting at the third paragraph. The executive summary. On December 29th, 2020, Secret Service forwarded related warnings to Capitol Police that pro-Trump demonstrators were being urged to occupy federal building, including marching into the Capitol building and making them quake in their shoes by our mere presence. That's a quote. Indeed, a Secret Service intelligence briefing on December 30th entitled, quote, March for Trump, unquote, highlighted the president's, quote, will be wild tweet, alongside hashtags we are the storm and hashtag 1776 rebel and hashtag occupy capitals, writing, quote, President Trump supporters have proposed a movement to occupy Capitol Hill, unquote. On January 1st, 2021, a lieutenant in the intelligence branch at D.C. police forwarded a civilian tip about, quote, a website planning terroristic behavior on January 6 during the rally, unquote, to Capitol Police Intelligence. There are detailed plans to storm federal buildings. Quote, there are detailed plans to storm federal buildings, unquote, including, quote, the Capitol in D.C. on January 6th, unquote, the tipster reported, linking to the Donald.win. On January 2nd, 2021, the FBI discovered a social media posting that read, quote, this is not a rally and it's no longer a protest. This is a final stand. Many are ready to die to take back #USA. And don't be surprised if we take the #Capitol building, unquote. On January 3rd, 2021, a Parler user's post under the name 1776 2.0, Minuteman noting, quote, after Wednesday, we are going to need a new Congress, unquote. And, quote, January 6th may actually be their members of Congress' last day in office, reached the FBI and Capitol Police. The FBI field office in Norfolk, Virginia, issued an alert to law enforcement agencies on January 5th titled, quote, potential for violence in Washington, D.C. area in connection with planned Stop the Steal protest on 6 January 2021, unquote, which noted an online thread discussed specific cause for violence to include stating, quote, be ready to fight. Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors being kicked in, the blood being spilled. Get violent. Stop calling this a march or rally or a protest. Go there ready for war. We get our president or we die. Nothing else will achieve this goal. Unquote. In addition, the alert copied, quote, perimeter maps of the Capitol and caravan pictures that were posted, unquote, on the Donald.win, particularly worrying that the, quote, caravans had the same colors as the sections of the perimeter of the Capitol. Secret Service also knew about caravans planning to come to D.C. to, quote, unquote, occupy the Capitol. That same day, representatives from DHS, FBI, and D.C.'s Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, Secret Service, D.C. Police, and Capitol Police shared a website, Red State Secession, which had a post titled, Why the Second American Revolution Starts January 6, unquote. A user asked visitors to post the Second American Revolution starts January 6. A user asked visitors to post where they could find the home addresses of Democratic congressmen and, quote, political enemies, unquote, and ask if, quote, any of our enemies will be working in offices in D.C. that afternoon, unquote. What are their routes to and from the event, unquote. The post continued, quote, the crowd will be looking for enemies, unquote. A Secret Service open source unit flagged an account on the Donald.win that threatened to bring a sniper rifle to a rally on January 6th. The user also posted a picture of a handgun and rifle with the caption, quote, Sunday gun day providing Overwatch. January 6th will be wild. Remember we was talking about he was trying to get the Secret Service men to bring him up there? Yeah, so they could kill him and claim it was Antifa, and he could declare martial law. You understand? Yeah. The Secret Service learned from the FBI on January 5th about right-wing groups establishing armed quick reaction forces in Virginia, where they could amass firearms illegal in D.C. Trump supporters staged there waiting across the river, quote, to respond to calls for help, unquote. The Oath Keepers were such a group. President Trump's closest aides knew about the political power of sites like the Donald.win, which is where much of this violent rhetoric and planning happened. On December 30th, 2020, Jason Miller, a senior advisor to and former spokesman for the former president, texted Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to a link to the Donald.win, adding, quote, I got the base fired up, unquote. The link connected to a page with comments like, quote, gallows don't require electricity, unquote. If, and this is all in quotations here, if the filthy commie maggots try to push their fraud through, there will be hell to pay. And Congress can certify Trump the winner or leave in a body bag. Symbolic gallows were constructed on January 6th at the foot of the Capitol. After President Trump's signal, his supporters did not hide their plans for violence at the Capitol, and those threats made their way to national and local law enforcement agencies. As described in this report, the intelligence agencies did detect this planning, and they shared it with the White House and with the U.S. Secret Service. Testimony from White House staff also suggests real concerns about the risk of violence as January 6th approached. Cassidy Hutchinson, for example, testified about a conversation she had with her boss, Mark Meadows, on January 2nd. I went into Mark's office, and he was still on his phone. I said to Mark, quote, Rudy Giuliani said these things to me. What's going on here? Anything I should know about? He was like looking at his phone. He was like, quote, oh, it's all about the rally on Wednesday. Isn't that what he was talking to you about? Unquote. I said, yeah, sounds like we're going to the Capitol. He said, yeah. Or are you talking with Tony? I'm having a conversation, sir. He said, still looking at his phone, I remember he was scrolling. He was like, yeah, you know, things might get real bad on the 6th. And I remember saying to him, what do you mean? He was like, I don't know. There's just going to be a lot of people here, and there's a lot of different ideas right now. I'm not really sure of everything that's going on. Let's just make sure we keep tabs on it. Hutchison also testified about a conversation she had with Director of National Intelligence, Ratcliffe. He had expressed to me that he was concerned that it could spiral out of control and potentially be dangerous, either for our democracy or the way that things were going for the 6th. Hope Hicks texted Trump campaign spokesperson Hogan Gidley in the midst of the January 6th violence, explaining that she had, quote, suggested several times, unquote, on the preceding days, January 4th and January 5th, that President Trump publicly state that January 6th must remain peaceful, and that he had refused her advice to do so. Her recollection was that Hirschman earlier advised President Trump to make a preemptive public statement in advance of January 6th, calling for no violence that day. No such statement was made. The District of Columbia Homeland Security Office explicitly warned that groups were planning to, quote, occupy the Capitol, to halt the vote, unquote. We got derogatory information from OSINT suggesting that some very, very violent individuals were organizing to come to D.C. And not only were they organized to come to D.C., but they were, these groups, these non-aligned groups were aligning. And so all the red flags went up at that point. You know, when you have armed so-called militia, collaborating with white supremacy groups, collaborating with conspiracy theory groups online, all toward a common goal, you start seeing what we call in, terrorism, a blended ideology. And that's a very, very bad sign. Then when they were clearly across, not just across one platform, but across multi-platforms of these groups coordinating, not just like chatting, quote, hey, how's it going? What's the weather like? Where you at? No, but like, what are you bringing? What are you wearing? You know, where do we meet up? Do you have plans for the Capitol? That's operational. That's like pre-operational intelligence, right? And that is something that's clearly alarming. Again, this type of intelligence was shared, including obvious warnings about potential violence prior to January 6th. What was not shared and was not fully understood by intelligence and law enforcement entities is what role President Trump would play on January 6th in exacerbating the violence and later refusing to, for multiple hours, to instruct his supporters to stand down and leave the Capitol. No intelligence collection was apparently performed on President Trump's plans for January 6th. Well, first of all, even though there was no verbal communications that you got from him, his failure to do anything to put a stop to it tells you what his plans were. Do you understand? Okay, so nor was there no intelligence collection, it says no intelligence collection was apparently performed on President Trump's plans for January 6th, nor was there any analysis performed on what he might do to exacerbate potential violence. Certain Republican members of Congress who were working with Trump and the Giuliani team may have had insight on this particular risk, but none appear to have alerted the Capitol Police or any other law enforcement authority. On January 2nd, 2021, you remember I told you got a bunch of snakes up there in your garden. So, on January 2nd, 2021, Katrina Pearson wrote in an email to fellow rally organizers, quote, POTUS expectations are to have something intimate at the ellipse and call on everyone to march to the Capitol, unquote. And on January 4th, 2021, another rally organizer texted Mike Lindell, the My Pillow CEO, that President Trump would, quote, unquote, unexpectedly call on his supporters to march to the Capitol. And it was, in other words, it was not no spur of the moment thing. That was the plan all the time. It says, this stays only between us. Now that's what it said. This stays only between us. It can also not get out about the march because I will be in trouble with the National Park Service and all the agencies, but POTUS is going to just call for it unexpectedly. Testimony obtained by the committee also indicates that President Trump was specifically aware that the crowd he had called to Washington was fired up and angry on the evening of January 5th. Judd Deere, a deputy White House press secretary, recalled a conversation with President Trump in the Oval Office on the evening of January 5th. He said, Judd Deere said, I said he should focus on policy accomplishments. I didn't mention the 2020 election. And the committee staff, the committee asked him a question. What was his response? And Deere said, he acknowledged that and said, quote, we've had a lot, something along those lines, but didn't he fairly quickly moved to how fired up the crowd is or was going to be. And the committee staff asked him, okay, what did he say about it? Deere said, just that they were fired up. They were angry. They feel like the election's been stolen. That they, see, he's playing on their emotions, stoking them fires of emotions. He says they feel like the election's been stolen, that the election was rigged, that he went on and on about that for a little bit. Testimony indicated that President Trump was briefed on the risk of violence on the morning of the 6th before he left the White House. Cassidy Hutchinson provided this testimony. The Vice Chair Cheney says, so, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that Mr. Ornato told the president about weapons at the rally on the morning of January 6th? Ms. Hutchinson's response, that is what Mr. Ornato relayed to me. The head of President Trump's security detail, Bobby Engel, told the Select Committee that when he shared critical information with White House Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato, it was a means of conveying that information with the Oval Office. Quote, so when it came to passing information to Mr. Ornato, my assumption was that it would get to the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, or that he was sharing the information with the chief. I don't, and the filtering process, or if the chief thinks it needs, I'm just reading what's here now. If the chief thinks it needs to get to the president, then he would share it with the president, unquote. Also, Engel confirmed that if, quote, information would come to my attention, whether it was a positive intelligence issue or a concern, or primarily, I would make sure that the information got filtered up through the appropriate chains, usually through Mr. Ornato. So if I received a report on something that was happening in the DC area, I'd either forward that information to Mr. Ornato or call him about that information or communicate in some way, unquote. The Select Committee also queried Deputy Chief of Staff Ornato this November about what he generally would have done in this sort of situation, asking him the following, quote, generally, you receive information about things like the groups that are coming, the stuff that we talked earlier. You would bring that to Mr. Meadows and likely did here, although you don't have a specific recollection. Ornato responded, quote, that is correct, sir. Ornato also explained to the committee that, quote, in my normal daily functions, in my general functions as my job, I would have had a conversation with him about all the groups coming in and what was expected from the Secret Service. As for the morning of January 6th itself, he had the following answer. The committee asked him, do you remember talking to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows about any of your concerns about the threat landscape going into January 6th? His response was, Ornato's response was, I don't recall. However, in my position, I would have made sure he was tracking the demos, which he received a daily brief, presidential briefing. So he most likely was getting all this in his daily brief as well. I wouldn't know what was in his intelligence brief that day, but I would have made sure that he was tracking these things and just mentioned, quote, hey, you are tracking the demos, unquote. If he gave me a yeah, quote, yeah, I don't recall it today, but I'm sure that was something that took place. He is lying. He was in on it. And it says, Ornato had access to intelligence. How you gonna tell me you don't remember what took place when all this dangerous stuff was going on in the Capitol? It's your job to remember. Ornato had access to intelligence that suggested violence at the Capitol on January 6th, and it was his job to inform Meadows and President Trump of that. He didn't have to inform them, they knew it. They was helping instigate it. It says, although Ornato told us that he did not recall doing so, the Select Committee found multiple parts of Ornato's testimony questionable. The Select Committee finds it difficult to believe that neither Meadows nor Arnotto told President Trump, as was their job, but the intelligence that was emerging as the January 6th rally approached. It says, the Select Committee finds it difficult to believe that neither Meadows nor Arnotto told President Trump, as was their job, about the intelligence that was emerging as the January 6th rally approached. Hours before the Ellipse rally on January 6th, the fact that the assembled crowd was prepared for potential violence was widely known. In addition to intelligence reports indicating potential violence at the Capitol, weapons and other prohibited items were being seized by police on the streets and by Secret Service at the magnetometers for the Ellipse speech. Secret Service confiscated a haul of weapons from the 28,000 spectators who did pass through the magnetometers, 242 canisters of pepper spray, 269 knives or blades, 18 brass knuckles, 18 tasers, 6 pieces of body armor, 3 gas masks, 30 batons or blunt instruments, and 17 miscellaneous items like scissors, needles, or screwdrivers. And thousands of others purposely remained outside the magnetometers, or left their packs outside. Others brought firearms. 3 men in fatigues from Broward County, Florida, brandished AR-15s in front of Metropolitan Police officers on 14th Street and Independence Avenue on the morning of January 6th. The MPD advised over the radio that one individual was possibly armed with a Glock at 14th and Constitution Avenue, and another was possibly armed with a rifle at 15th and Constitution Avenue around 11:23 a.m. The National Park Service detained an individual with a rifle between 12 and 1 p.m. Almost all of this was known before Donald Trump took the stage at the Ellipse. By the time President Trump was preparing to give his speech, he and his advisors knew enough to cancel the rally. And he certainly knew enough to cancel any plans for a march to the Capitol. According to testimony obtained by the Select Committee, President Trump knew that elements of the crowd were armed and had prohibited items, and that many thousands would not pass through the magnetometers for that reason. Testimony indicates that the president had received an earlier security briefing, and testimony indicates that the Secret Service mentioned the prohibited items again as they drove President Trump to the Ellipse. Cassidy Hutchinson was with the president backstage. Her contemporaneous note text messages indicate that President Trump was effing furious about the fact that a large number of his supporters would not go through the magnetometers. Cassidy Hutchinson says, but the crowd looks good from this vantage point, as long as we get the shot. He was effing furious. Tony Arnotto, he doesn't get this. This is what Tony Arnotto said. he doesn't get it that the people on the monument side don't want to come in. They can see from there and don't want to come in. They can see from there and don't have to go through mags with 30K magazine magged inside. Cassidy Hutchinson, she says that's what was relayed several times and in different iterations. Cassidy Hutchinson again, poor Max got chewed out. Cassidy says he also kept mentioning an off-the-record trip to the Capitol before he took the stage. Tony Arnado said, Bobby will tell him no. It's not safe to do. No assets available to safely do it. And Hutchinson described what President Trump said as he prepared to take the stage. When we were in the off-stage announce area, tent behind the stage, he was very concerned about the shot, meaning the photograph that we would get because the rally space wasn't full. One of the reasons, which I've previously stated, was because he wanted it to be full and for people to not feel excluded because they had come far to watch him at the rally. And he felt the images, the mags, were at fault for not letting, the magnetometers were at fault for not letting everybody in. But another leading reason, and likely the primary reason, is because he wanted it full and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons. What the Secret Service deemed as weapons and are weapons. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was a part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, quote, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away. The Secret Service special agent who drove the president after his speech told the select committee that Trump made a similar remark in the vehicle when his demand to go to the Capitol was refused. Essentially, that Trump did not believe his supporters posed a security risk to him personally. Minutes after the exchange that Hutchinson described, when President Trump took the stage, he pointedly expressed his concern about the thousands of attendees who would not enter the rally area and instructed Secret Service to allow that part of the crowd to enter anyway. I'd love to have, if those tens of thousands of people would be allowed, the military, the Secret Service, and we want to thank you, and the police, law enforcement. Great. You're doing a great job, but I'd love it if they could be allowed to come up here with us. Is that possible? Can you just let them come up, please? Although President Trump and his advisors knew of the risk of violence and knew specifically that elements of the crowd were angry and some were armed, from intelligence and law enforcement reports that morning, President Trump nevertheless went forward with the rally and then specifically instructed the crowd to march to the Capitol. Quote, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have to come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. Much of President Trump's speech was improvised. Even before his improvisation during the review of President Trump's prepared remarks, White House lawyer Eric Hirschman specifically requested that, quote, if there were any factual allegations, someone needed to independently validate or verify the statements, unquote. And in the days just before January 6th, Hirschman, quote unquote, chewed out John Eastman and told him he was, quote, out of his effing mind to argue that the vice president could be the sole decision maker as to who becomes the next president. Hirschman told us, quote, I so berated him that I believed that theory would not go forward, unquote. But President Trump made that very argument during his speech at the Ellipse and made many false statements. Hirschman attended that speech, but walked out during the middle of it. President Trump's speech to the crowd that day lasted more than an hour. The speech walked through dozens of known falsehoods about purported election fraud, and Trump again made false and malicious claims about Dominion voting machines. As discussed earlier, he again pressured Mike Pence to refuse to count lawful electoral votes, going off script repeatedly, leading the crowd to believe falsely that Pence could and would alter the election outcome. And I just spoke to Mike. I said, quote, Mike, that doesn't take courage. What takes courage is to do nothing. That takes courage. And then we're stuck with a president who lost the election by a lot, and we have to live with that for 4 more years. We're just not going to let that happen. When you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos, this is Trump talking, and the stupid people that he's listening to. This characterization of Vice President Pence's decision had a direct impact on those who marched to and approached the Capitol, as illustrated by this testimony from a person convicted of crimes committed on January 6th. So this woman came up to the side of us and she says, Pence folded. So it was kind of like, okay, well, in my mind, I was thinking, quote, well, that's it, you know. Well, my son-in-law looks at me and he says, I want to go in. Trump used the word peacefully. I want to go in. Trump used the word, quote unquote, peacefully, written by speech writers. One time, but he used that one time, but he delivered many other scripted and unscripted comments that conveyed a very different message. Because you'll never, this Trump talking, but you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. And we fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Trump also was not the only rally speaker to do these things. Giuliani, for instance, also said, quote, "Let's have trial by combat," unquote. Likewise, Eastman used his 2 minutes on the ellipse stage to make a claim already known to be a lie, that corrupted voted machines stole the election. The best indication of the impact of President Trump's words, both during the ellipse speech and beforehand, are the comments from the supporters who attended the ellipse rally and their conduct immediately thereafter. Video clips show several of the attendees on their way to the Capitol or shortly after they arrived. I'm telling you what, I'm hearing that Pence, Trump talking again, I'm hearing that Pence, the Pence just caved. No, is that true? I didn't hear it. I'm here. I'm hearing. I'm hearing reports that Pence caved. No way. I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're going to drag MFs through the streets. You effing politicians are going to get effing drug through the streets. Yes, I guess the hope is that there's such a show of force here that Pence will decide to do the right thing, according to Trump. Pence voted against Trump. Interviewer. Okay, and that's when all this started. Yep. That's when we marched on the Capitol. We just heard that Mike Pence is not going to reject any fraudulent electoral votes. Other speaker. Boo. You're a traitor. Boo. That's right. You've heard it here first. You heard it here first. Mike Pence has betrayed the United States of America. Other speaker. Boo. F you, Mike Pence. And Mike Pence has betrayed this president, and he has betrayed the people of the United States. And we will never, ever forget. And everybody cheered that. Then they had a question. What percentage of the crowd is going to the Capitol? Answer. Oath keeper, Jessica Watkins, she responded, 100%. It has spread like wildfire that Pence has betrayed us, and everybody marching on the Capitol, all million of us. It's insane. Another criminal defendant charged with assaulting an officer with a flagpole and other crimes explained in an interview why he went to the Capitol and fought. Dale Huddle, he says, we were not there illegally. We were invited there by the president himself. You had any demonstration, any march that you go to that becomes violent, you are there illegally. The Constitution gives you the right to peaceful demonstration. It don't give you the right to riot and take up arms against your government. You don't have the right to do that. So, he's talking about we were there legally. We were invited there by the president himself. Something you learn in the military, since you claim you are militias, is that you don't obey orders that are unlawful. You cannot follow the orders of a commander and commanding officer if those orders will get you to commit crimes against the state or against humanity. Do you understand? It says Trump's backers had been told that the election had been stolen. Well, it's a whole lot of, it's funny how people get selective submission. You believe everything somebody tell you? I mean, really. I mean, so if you were just told that somebody did a thing, you don't think it's worth saying, well, how you know they did it? I mean, give me something to hang my hat on. I mean, I'm not finna go out here and beat up nobody because you just said that they did something. Well, did they really do that? I mean, give me something to hang my hat on. I can't just go out here and, I mean, in the military, they got a saying, the Marine Corps, yours is not to reason why, yours is but to do or die, trying. But that don't go with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, because if you follow an unlawful order, you're gonna be court-martialed. Do you understand? It's certain orders you better know what you're following. But anyway, reporter Megan Hickey. But do you think he encouraged violence? Dale Huddle. Well, I sat there or stood there with 500,000 people listening to his speech. And in that speech, both Giuliani and Trump said, we were going to have to fight like hell to save our country. Now, whether it was a figure of speech or not, it wasn't taken that way. Reporter Megan Hickey. You didn't take it as a figure of speech. No. Dale Huddle said no. President Trump concluded his speech at 1:10 p.m. Among other statements from the ellipse podium, President Trump informed the crowd that he would be marching to the Capitol with them. Now, it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this is Trump talking, and after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering to so much for some of them. Hutchinson testified that she first became aware of President Trump's plans to attend Congress's session to count votes on or about January 2nd. She learned this from a conversation with Giuliani. Listen to this part real good. I think that's coming up to where Giuliani said he's going to look powerful. You know, his excuse for going up there was that he wanted to go in there and see him count the votes. But that wasn't the reason he was going up there. He was going up there to declare martial law. But anyway, it's going to be great, Giuliani said. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Evidence also indicates that multiple members of the White House staff, including White House lawyers, were concerned about the president's apparent intentions to go to the Capitol. After he exited the stage, President Trump entered the presidential SUV and forcefully expressed his intention that Bobby Engel, the head of his Secret Service detail, direct the motorcade to the Capitol. The committee has now obtained evidence from several sources about a, quote, furious interaction, unquote, in the SUV. The vast majority of witnesses who have testified before the Select Committee about this topic, including multiple members of the Secret Service, a member of the Metropolitan Police, and national security and military officials in the White House, described President Trump's behavior as, quote, irate, furious, insistent, profane, and heated. Hutchinson heard about the exchange secondhand and related what she heard in our June 28th, 2022 hearing from Ornato, as did another witness, a White House employee with national security responsibilities, who shared that Ornato also recounted to him President Trump's irate, quote unquote, irate behavior in the presidential vehicle. Let me show you something. You see, remember I told you Donald Trump is a coward? He's like a child in the sense of whether he got nerve enough to attack you. He ain't gonna attack nobody. He gets other people to do that. He screams and hollers like a child that can't get his way. You understand? And when they wouldn't take him, you know, wasn't nothing stopping him from getting out the car and walking if he wanted to get out and walk. Huh? He's a coward, man. When them agents refused to do what he wanted done, he calmed down. If they hadn't refused, they'd be dead now. Anyway, it says, Arnado described Trump's, he recounted Trump's quote unquote irate behavior in the presidential vehicle. Other members of the White House staff and Secret Service also heard about the exchange after the fact. The White House employee with national security responsibilities gave this testimony. The committee staff asked him, but it sounds like you recall some rumor or some discussion around the West Wing about the president's anger about being told that he couldn't go to the Capitol. Is that right? And the employee. So Mr. Ornato said that he was angry that he couldn't go right away. In the days following that, I do remember, you know, again, hearing again how angry the president was when, you know, they were in the limo. But beyond specifics of that, that's pretty much the extent of the cooler talk. you know, people standing around the water cooler talking about gossiping, you know, about what happened. He said, well, let's just cooler talk. The committee has regarded both Hutchinson and the corroborating testimony by the White House employee with national security responsibilities as earnest and has no reason to conclude that either had a reason to invent their accounts. A Secret Service agent who worked on one of the details in the White House and was present in the Ellipse motorcade had this comment. Committee staff. Ms. Hutchinson has suggested to the committee that you sympathized with her after her testimony and believed her account. Is that accurate? Special agent. I have no, yeah, that's accurate. I have no reason. I mean, we became friends. We worked. I worked every day with her for 6 months. Yeah, she became a friend of mine. We had a good working relationship. I have no reason. She's never done me wrong. She's never lied that I know of. Well, he was vague, but he said she ain't never lied that he know of. Huh? The committee's principal concerns was that the president actually intended to participate personally in the January 6th efforts at the Capitol, leading the attempt to overturn the election either from inside the House chamber, from a stage outside the Capitol, or otherwise. Yes, he intended. He intended to declare martial law after he got things to be real wild. Do you understand? Okay. The committee regarded those facts as important because they are relevant to President Trump's intent on January 6th. You notice they all called him irate, that he was just, see, because they was taking away his main, thunder. Giuliani gave it up when he said he's going to look powerful. I didn't hear you. He couldn't look powerful if he didn't get up there and declare martial law. Huh? Okay. There is no question from all the evidence assembled that President Trump did have that intent. Oh yeah. He wanted to stop that election. And he says, as it became clear that Donald Trump desired to travel to the Capitol on January 6th, a White House security official in the White House complex became very concerned about his intentions. See, they ain't saying what the real concern was. I already told you what the real concern was. You see, they ain't mentioned Mike Flynn and had all of them told him he can declare martial law and that would put everything on hold and all that. Oh, yeah, he had it planned. It says, to be completely honest, we were all in a state of shock. As it says, a White House security official in the White House complex became very concerned about his intentions. Now, they ain't naming who the official is, but it says, this is what the official said. To be completely honest, we were all in a state of shock. I think the actual physical feasibility of doing it. And then also, we all knew what that implicated and what that meant. That this was no longer a rally, that this was going to move to something else if he physically walked to the Capitol. Huh? So they ain't as naive as they've been acting in the news media. He said, I don't know if you want to use the word, quote unquote, insurrection, coup, whatever. We all knew that this would move from a normal democratic, public event into something else. President Trump continued to push to travel to the Capitol, even after his return to the White House, despite knowing that a riot was underway. Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, spoke with President Trump about his desire to go to the Capitol after he returned to the White House from the ellipse. Quote, so to the best of my recollection, I recall him saying that he wanted to physically walk and be a part of the march, and then saying that he would ride the beast if he needed to ride in the presidential limo. Later in the afternoon, Mark Meadows relayed to Cassidy Hutchinson that President Trump was still upset that he would not be able to go to the Capitol that day. As he told Hutchinson, quote, the president wasn't happy that Bobby Engel didn't pull it off for him, and that Mark didn't work hard enough to get the movement on the books. 187 minutes. Trump's dereliction of duty. Just after 1 p.m., Vice President Pence, serving as President of the Senate under Article 1 of the Constitution, gavelled the Congress into its joint session, and President Trump was giving a speech at the ellipse, which he concluded at 1:10 p.m. For the next few hours, an attack on our Capitol occurred, perpetrated by Trump supporters, many of whom were present in the ellipse. Present at the ellipse. Excuse me. For President Trump's speech, they were present at the ellipse for President Trump's speech. More than 140 Capitol and Metropolitan Police were injured, some very seriously. A perimeter security line of Metropolitan Police intended to secure the Capitol against intrusion broke in the face of thousands of armed rioters, more than 2,000 of whom gained access to the interior of the Capitol building. A woman who attempted to forcibly enter the chamber of the House of Representatives through a broken window while the House was in session was shot and killed by police guarding the chamber. Vice President Pence and his family were at risk, as were those Secret Service professionals protecting him. Congressional proceedings were halted, and legislators were rushed to secure locations. We all witnessed this on television. From the outset of the violence, and for several hours that followed, people at the Capitol, people inside President Trump's administration, elected officials of both parties, members of President Trump's family, and Fox News commentators sympathetic to President Trump all tried to contact him to urge him to do one singular thing, one thing that all of these people immediately understood was required: instruct his supporters to stand down and disperse, to leave the Capitol. As the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates President Trump specifically and repeatedly refused to do so for multiple hours, while the mayhem, MAGA, okay, while the mayhem ensued, anarchy, godlessness, are autocrats, autocracies, MAGA. So he says, for example, for multiple hours while the mayhem ensued. Chapter 8 of this report explains in meticulous detail the horrific nature of the violence taking place that was directed at law enforcement officers at the Capitol and that put the lives of American lawmakers at risk. Yet, in spite of this, President Trump watched the violence on television from a dining room adjacent to the Oval Office, calling senators to urge them to help him delay the electoral count, but refusing to supply the specific help that everyone knew was unequivocally required. As this report shows, when Trump finally did make such a statement at 4:17 p.m., after hours of violence, the statement immediately had the expected effect. The rioters began to disperse immediately and leave the Capitol. There's your proof that he was in charge of it all. I didn't hear you? All right. Trump was the beginning and the ending of that. Huh? All right. To fully understand the president's behavior during those hours, now commonly known as the 100, quote unquote, 187 minutes. 3 hours and 7 minutes. It is important to understand the context in which it occurred. As outlined in this report, by the afternoon of January 6, virtually all of President Trump's efforts to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election had failed. Virtually all the lawsuits had already been lost. Vice President Mike Pence had refused Trump's pressure to stop the count, to break the law and stop the count of certain electoral votes. State officials and legislators had refused to unlawfully reverse the election outcome in every state where Trump and his team attempted to apply pressure. The Justice Department's investigations of alleged election fraud had all contradicted Trump's allegations. The only factor working in Trump's favor that might succeed in materially delaying the counting of electoral votes for President-elect Biden was the violent crowd at the Capitol. And for much of the afternoon of January 6th, it appeared that the crowd had accomplished that purpose. Congressional leaders were advised by Capitol Police at one or more points during the attack that it would likely take several days before the Capitol could safely be reopened. By the time the president's speech concluded, the lawlessness at the United States Capitol had already begun. But the situation was about to get much worse. By 1:25 p.m., President Trump was informed that the Capitol was under attack. Minutes after arriving back at the White House, the president ran into a member of the White House staff and asked if they had watched his speech on television. Quote, "Sir, they cut it off because they're rioting down at the Capitol," unquote, the employee said. The president asked what they meant by that. Quote, "They're rioting down there at the Capitol," unquote, the employee repeated. "Oh, really?" Quote, the president asked. Boy, that asshole. I'm sorry. I told you now, I grew up here. So, that jackass, all right, let's go. Let's go see. Listen at him. All right, let's go see. That's Trump talking. A photograph taken by the White House photographer, the last one permitted until later in the day, captures the moment the president was made aware of the violent uprising at the Capitol. Not long thereafter, as thousands of Trump supporters, oh, and by the way, if you can find fault in me for saying that using the term asshole, how come you ain't found no fault in all of yourselves for all of that stuff y'all be saying? You sure you want to walk down that road with me? You see how much control I have over my mouth? I know all of the words that you know, but you don't see me letting them fly out of my mouth. Be careful how you judge, lest it fall back on you. So, not long thereafter, as thousands of Trump supporters from the ellipse speech continued to arrive at the Capitol, the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department declared a riot at the Capitol at 1:49 p.m. The same time, Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund informed the D.C. National Guard, quote, that there was a dire emergency on Capitol Hill and requested the immediate assistance of as many National Guard troops as possible, unquote. No photographs exist of the president for the remainder of the afternoon until after 4 p.m. President Trump appears to have instructed that the White House photographer was not to take any photographs. The select committee, well, if he had took photographs, they'd have took photographs of him sitting down looking at TV, cheering on the mob. The select committee also was unable to locate any official records of President Trump's telephone calls that afternoon. And the president's official daily diary contains no information for this afternoon between the hours of 1:19 p.m. and 4:03 p.m. At the height of the worst attack on the seat of the United States Congress in over 2 centuries. The Select Committee did, however, obtain records from non-official sources that contain data of some phone calls President Trump made that afternoon, even though, quote, he was placing lots of calls that afternoon, according to his personal assistant. The select committee was given no records of any calls from the president to security or law enforcement officials that afternoon. And that absence of data is consistent with testimony of witnesses who would have knowledge of any such calls, who said that he did not do so. Based on testimony from President Trump's close aides, we know that President Trump remained in the dining room adjacent to the Oval Office for the rest of the afternoon until after 4:03 p.m. In fact, from cellular telephone records, it appears that at 1:39 p.m. and 2:03 p.m., after being informed of the riot at the Capitol, President Trump called his lawyer, Rudolph Giuliani. These calls lasted approximately 4 minutes and 8 minutes, respectively. And Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany testified that President Trump also called a number of senators. The number or names of all such members of Congress is unknown, although Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, received one such outgoing call from the president within the hour that followed. At 1:49 p.m., just as the D.C. Metropolitan Police officially declared a riot and the Capitol Police were calling for help from the National Guard to address the crisis, President Trump sent a tweet with a link to a recording of his speech at the Ellipse. At about that point, White House counsel Pat Cipollone became aware of the Capitol riot. The committee collected sworn testimony from several White House officials, each with similar accounts. The president's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, testified that he raced downstairs and went to the Oval Office dining room as soon as he learned about the violence at the Capitol, likely just around or about or just after 2 p.m. Cipollone knew immediately that the president had to deliver a message to the rioters, asking them to leave the Capitol. Here's how he described this series of events. The first time I remember going downstairs was when people had breached the Capitol, but I went down with Deputy White House counsel Pat Philbin, and I remember we were both very upset about what was happening, and we both wanted, action to be taken related to that. But we went down to the Oval Office, we went through the Oval Office, and we went to the back where the president was. I think he was already in the dining room. I can't talk about conversations with the president. I think I was pretty clear there needed to be an immediate and forceful response. What do you mean you can't talk about conversations with the president? What do you mean? Boy, these people, all of them need to be put in jail for the rest of their lives. I think I was pretty clear there needed to be an immediate and forceful response, statement, public statement, that people need to leave the Capitol now. Cipollone also left little doubt that virtually everyone among senior White House staff had the same view. If you really had that same view, you wouldn't have still been on his staff. if y'all really was against what he was doing. There were a lot of people in the White House that day, senior people who, felt the same way that I did and who were working very hard to achieve the result. There were, I think, Ivanka was one of them, and Eric Hirschman was there. Pat Philbin was there, and a number of other people. Many people suggested it. Many people felt the same way. I'm sure I had conversations with Mark Meadows about this during the course of the day and expressed my opinion very forcefully that this needs to be done. Likewise, senior staff cooperated to produce a message for the president on a note card which read, "Anyone who entered the Capitol illegally without proper authority should leave immediately." The president declined to make the statement. Cipollone also made it clear that the advice they were giving to the president never changed. Throughout this 3-hour period, Trump refused to do what was necessary. So the committee asked this question. It sounds like you, from the very onset of violence at the Capitol, right around 2 o'clock, were pushing for a strong statement that people should leave the Capitol. Is that right? Cipollone: I was, and others were as well. Cassidy Hutchinson, who worked closely with Mark Meadows and sat directly outside his office, confirmed this account and described several additional details. I see Pat Cipollone barreling down the hallway towards our office, and he rushed right in, looked at me, said, quote, "Is Mark in his office?" And I said, quote, "Yes." And on a normal day, he would have said, "Can I pop in?" Or, "Is he talking to anyone?" Or, "Is it appropriate? Is it an appropriate time for me to go chat with him?" And myself or Eliza would go let him in or tell him no. But after I had said yes, he just looked at me and started shaking his head and went over, opened Mark's office door, stood there with the door propped open, and said something to the effect. Mark was still Mark was still on his phone. I remember glancing in. He was still sitting on his phone. And I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, "The rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now." And Mark looked up at him and said, "He doesn't want to do anything, Pat." And Pat said something to the effect of, and very clearly said this to Mark, something to the effect of, "Mark, something needs to be done or people are going to die and the blood's going to be on your effing hands. This is getting out of control. I'm going down there." The Select Committee believes that the entire White House senior staff was in favor of a presidential statement specifically instructing the violent rioters to leave. But President Trump refused. White House counsel Pat Cipollone answered certain questions from the Select Committee on this subject as follows. Ms. Cheney asked, "And when you talk about others on the staff thinking more should be done, or thinking that the president needed to tell people to go home, who would you put in that category?" Cephalon answers, well, I would put Pat Philbin, Eric Hirschman, overall, Mark Meadows, Ivanka. Once Jared got there, Jared, General Kellogg, I'm probably missing some, but those are Kaylee, I think was there, but I don't, Dan Scavino, Miss Cheney, and who on the staff did not want people to leave the Capitol? Cephalon. On the staff? Miss Cheney says, in the White House. In the White House? Cephalon. I can't think of anybody on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol particularly once the violence started. No, I mean, Mr. Schiff, what about the president? Vice Chair Cheney said, yeah. Consultation between Mr. Cephalon and his counsel. Cephalon, yeah, I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think you know. Yeah. You know, it's sad that you got spineless people in jobs that require manhood. Ain't that something? The testimony of a White House employee with national security responsibilities also corroborated these facts. This employee testified about a conversation between Pat Cephalon and Eric Hirschman, in which Hirschman indicated that the president did not want to do anything to halt the violence. That employee told the select committee that he overheard Hirschman saying something to the effect of, quote, the president didn't want anything done, unquote. Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deary also testified to the select committee that as soon as it was clear that the Capitol's outer perimeter had been breached, he urged that the president make a statement telling the rioters to go home. The committee staff asked him, and so what did you do at that point? John Deary, if I recall, I went back up to Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany's office and indicated that we now likely needed to say something. This committee staff asked, okay, and why did you think it was necessary to say something? Deary responds, well, I mean, it appears that individuals are storming the U.S. Capitol building. They also appear to be supporters of Donald Trump, who may have been in attendance at the rally. We're going to need to say something. So the committee staff asked them again, and did you have a view as to what should be said by the White House? Deary responds, if I recall, I told Kayleigh that I thought that we needed to encourage individuals to stop, to respect law enforcement, and to go home. And it was incumbent upon us to encourage those individuals, should they be supporters of ours, to stop. Testimony from both Deputy Press Secretary Matthews and White House counsel Cephalon indicated that it would have been easy and nearly instantaneous for Trump to make a public statement insisting that the crowd disperse. As Matthews explained, he could have done it. He could have done so in under a minute. It would take probably less than 60 seconds from the Oval Office dining room over to the press briefing room. And for folks that might not know, the briefing room is the room that you see the White House press secretary do briefings from with the podium and the blue backdrop. And there is a camera that is on in there at all times. And so if the president had wanted to make a statement and address the American people, he could have been on camera almost instantly. Cifalone also shared that assessment. Committee staff asked this question: would it have been possible at any moment for the president to walk down to the podium in the briefing room and talk to the nation at any time between when you first gave him that advice at 2 o'clock and 4:17, when the video statement went out? Would that have been possible? Cifalone: would it have been possible? Committee staff asked him, yes. Would it have been possible? Cifalone says, yes, it would have been possible. At 2:13 p.m., rioters broke into the Capitol and flooded the building. As the violence began to escalate, many Trump supporters and others outside the White House began urgently seeking his intervention. Mark Meadows' phone was flooded with text messages. These are just some of them. 2:32 p.m. from Fox News anchor Laura Ingraham. Quote, "Hey, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home." 2:35 p.m. Mick Mulvaney. Mark, quote, "Mark, he needs to stop this. Now, can I do anything to help?" 2:46 p.m. from Representative William Timmons, Republican of South Carolina. Quote, "The president needs to stop this ASAP." The 2:53 p.m. from Donald Trump Jr. Quote, "He's got to condemn this S word." He got to condemn this boo-boo ASAP. The Capitol police tweet is not enough. 3:04 p.m. from Representative Jeff Duncan, Republican of South Carolina. Quote, "POTUS needs to calm this S down, this boo-boo down." Boy, they 3:09 p.m. from former White House Chief of Staff Rice Priebus. Quote, "Tell them to go home," all caps, and explanation points. 3:13 p.m. from Elisa Farrah Griffin. Quote, "POTUS has to come out firmly and tell protesters to dissipate. Someone is going to get killed." 3:15 p.m. From Representative Chip Roy, Republican, Texas. Quote, "Fix this now." 3:31. Now remember, now these is all directed to the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. 3:31 p.m. from Fox News anchor Sean Hannity. Quote, "Can he make a statement? I saw the tweet. Ask people to peacefully leave the Capitol." 3:58 p.m. from Fox News anchor Brian Kilmeade. Quote, "Please get him on TV, destroying everything you guys have accomplished." What did they ever accomplish? Other than tax breaks for the rich people. Others on Capitol Hill appeared in the media or otherwise appeared via internet. Representatives Mike Gallagher, Republican of Wisconsin, issued a video appealing directly to the president. Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off. Call it off. The election is over. Call it off. Some members of Congress sent texts to President Trump's immediate staff or took to Twitter, where they knew the president spent time. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, issued a tweet. At Real Donald Trump, please appear on TV. Condemn the violence and tell people to disband. Representative Jamie Herrera Butler, Republican of Washington, sent a text to Mark Meadows. We need to hear from the president on TV. I hate that Biden jumped him on it. I hate that Biden jumped him on it. Well, Biden must have been saying something about it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's because President Biden knows that the country needs to be made aware that everything gonna be all right. You understand? It says Republican leader Kevin McCarthy tried repeatedly to reach President Trump and did at least once. He also reached out for help to multiple members of President Trump's family, including Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Kushner characterized Leader McCarthy's demeanor on the call as quote unquote scared. Kushner said this, I could hear in his voice that he really was nervous. And so obviously I took that seriously. And you know, I didn't know if I'd be able to have any impact, but I said, you know, it's better to at least try. And so like I said, I turned the shower off, threw on a suit, and and rushed into the White House as quickly as I could. Committee staff, yeah? What did he ask you to do when you say have an impact? What is it specifically that he needed your help with? Kushner, I don't recall a specific ask, just anything you could do. Again, I got the sense that, they were scared. Committee staff, they, meaning Leader McCarthy and people on the Hill because of the violence. Kushner, that he was scared. Yes. Kevin McCarthy told Fox News at 3:09 p.m. about his call with the president and elaborated about its contents in a conversation with CBS News' Nora O'Donnell at around 3:30. O'Donnell says, have you spoken with the president and asked him to perhaps come to the Capitol and tell his supporters it's time to leave? Leader McCarthy, I have spoken to the president. I asked him to talk to the nation and tell them to stop this. O'Donnell, the president invited tens of thousands of people to quote unquote stop the steal. I don't know if you heard his more than hour-long remarks or the remarks of his son, who was the wind-up. It was some heated stuff. Leader McCarthy, I just wonder whether someone is going to accurately call a spade a spade. And I am giving you the opportunity right now that your precious and beloved United States Capitol and our democracy is witnessing this. Call a spade, Leader McCarthy. Leader McCarthy says, I was very clear with the president when I called him. This has to stop. And he's got to go to the American public and tell them to stop this. O'Donnell says, Leader McCarthy, the President of the United States has a briefing room, steps from the Oval Office. It is the cameras are hot 24/7. As you know, why hasn't he walked down and said that now? Leader McCarthy, I conveyed to the President what I think is best to do, and I'm hopeful the President will do it. The committee has evidence from multiple sources regarding the content of Kevin McCarthy's direct conversation with Donald Trump during the violence. Representative Jamie Herrera Butler, Republican of Washington, to whom McCarthy spoke soon after, relayed more of the conversation between McCarthy and President Trump. And he said to President Trump, you have to go get on TV. You've got to get, this is what he says McCarthy told the president, you've got to get on Twitter. You've got to call these people off. You know what the president said to him? This is as it's happening, he said, well, Kevin, quote, well, Kevin, these aren't my people. You know, these are Antifa. And Kevin responded and said, no, they're your people. They literally just came through my office windows and my staff are running for cover. I mean, they're running for their lives. You need to call them off. And the president's response to Kevin, to me, was chilling. He said, well, Kevin, I guess they're just more upset about the election. You know, theft than you are. They're more upset about the election theft than you are. Huh? Representative Herrera Butler's account of the incident was also corroborated by former acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, who testified that Leader McCarthy told him several days later that President Trump had said during their call, Kevin, maybe these people are just more angry about this than you are. Maybe they're more upset. Mulvaney was also trying to reach administration officials to urge President Trump to instruct his supporters to leave the Capitol, as were many elected officials in both parties, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and several Republican members of Congress. As already noted, Sifalone and others in the White House repeatedly urged President Trump to tell his supporters to leave the Capitol. Sifalone described his conversations with Meadows after they failed to convince President Trump to deliver the necessary message. Now, I want to stop here for a minute. You notice at one point, Trump tried to tell Kevin that these was Antifa. Well, you see, that's what was going to enable him to declare martial law. See, they was going to kill some of them people and accuse them of being Antifa. And while he declares martial law, then Miss, what that crooked lawyer that he was going to, Sidney Powell, he was going to make her the special investigator and she was going to find the evidence on Biden and all the rest of them. You understand? Okay. Committee staff. Do you remember any, when I say committee staff, that's the January 6th committee, committee staff. Do you remember, they asking questions, do you remember any discussion with Mark Meadows with respect to his view that the president didn't want to do anything or was somehow resistant to wanting to say something along the lines that you suggested? Pat Ciffalone. Not just to be clear, many people suggested it. Committee staff, yeah. Ciffalone. Not just me. Many people felt the same way. I'm sure I had conversations with Mark about this during the course of the day and expressed my opinion very forcefully that this needs to be done. Committee staff. So your advice was tell people to leave the Capitol, and that took over 2 hours when there were subsequent statements made, tweets put forth that in your view were insufficient. Did you continue, Mr. Ciffalone, throughout the period of time up until 4/17, continue, you and others, to push for a stronger statement? Ciffalone, yes. Committee staff. At the onset of the violence, when you first noticed on television or wherever that rioters had actually breached the Capitol, did you have a conversation with Mark Meadows in which Meadows indicated he doesn't want to do anything? He, meaning the president? Ciffalone, I had a conversation, I'm sure with Mark Meadows, I'm sure with other people, of what I thought should be done. Did Mark say that to me? I don't have a recollection of him saying that to me, but he may have said something along the lines. At 2:16 p.m., security records indicate that the vice president was, quote, unquote, being pulled to a safer location. In an interview with the Select Committee, a White House secretary official on duty at the White House explained his observations as he listened to Secret Service communications and made contemporaneous entries into a security log. In particular, he explained an entry he made at 2:24 p.m. Committee staff. Okay, that last entry on this page is service at the Capitol does not sound good right now. And official, correct. Committee staff. What does that mean? The official. The official is the Secret Service official, I guess. It says, the member of the VP detail at this time, the members of the VP, the Vice President's detail at this time, were starting to fear for their own lives. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of very personal calls over the radio. So it was disturbing. I don't like talking about it, but there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly. Committee staff. And did you hear that over the radio? The official said, correct. Committee staff. Obviously, you've conveyed that's disturbing, but what prompted you to put it into an entry as it states there, service at the Capitol? quote unquote service at the Capitol, the official, that they're running out of options and they're getting nervous. It sounds like that we came very close to either service having to use lethal options or worse. At that point, I don't know, is the VP compromised? Is the detail? Like, I don't know. Like, we didn't have visibility. But it doesn't, if they're screaming and saying things like, say goodbye to your to the family, like, the floor needs to know this is going to a whole nother level soon. Also, at 2:24 p.m., knowing the riot was underway and that Vice President Pence was at the Capitol, President Trump sent this tweet. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a correct set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. Evidence shows that the 2:24 p.m. tweet immediately precipitated further violence at the Capitol. Immediately after this tweet, the crowds both inside and outside of the Capitol building violently surged forward. Outside the building, within 10 minutes, thousands of rioters overran the line on the west side of the Capitol that was being held by the Metropolitan Police Force's Civil Disturbance Unit. The first time in history of the D.C. Metro Police that such a security line had ever been broken. Virtually everyone on the White House staff, the Select Committee interviewed, condemned the 2:24 p.m. tweet in the strongest terms. Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger told the Select Committee that the 2:24 p.m. tweet was so destructive that it convinced him to resign as soon as possible. One of my aides handed me a sheet of paper that contained the tweet that you just read. I read it and was quite disturbed by it. I was disturbed and worried to see that the president was attacking Vice President Pence for doing his constitutional duty. So the tweet looked to me like the opposite of what we really needed at that moment, which was a de-escalation. And that is why I had said earlier that it looked like fuel being poured on the fire. So that was the moment that I decided that I was going to resign, that would be my last day at the White House. I simply didn't want to be associated with the events, that were unfolding at the Capitol. Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews had a similar reaction. So it was obvious that the situation at the Capitol was violent and escalating quickly. And so I thought that the tweet about the vice president was the last thing that was needed in that moment. And I remember thinking that this was going to be bad for him to tweet this, because it was essentially him giving the green light to these people, telling them that what they were doing at the steps of the Capitol and entering the Capitol was okay, that they were justified in their anger, and he shouldn't have been doing that. He should have been telling these people to go home and to leave and to condemn the violence that we were seeing. And I'm someone who has worked with him. You know, I worked on the campaign, traveled all around the country, going to countless rallies with him, and I have seen the impact that his words have on his supporters. They truly latch on to every word and every tweet that he says. And so I think that in that moment, for him to tweet out the message about Mike Pence, it was him pouring gasoline on the fire and making it much worse. Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deary stated the following: committee staff, what was your reaction when you saw that tweet? Deary, extremely unhelpful. Committee staff, why? Deary, it wasn't the message that we needed at that time. It wasn't going to. The scenes at the U.S. Capitol were only getting worse at that point. This was not going to help that. White House Counsel Pat Cipollone told the Select Committee, I don't remember when exactly I heard about that tweet, but my reaction to it is that's a terrible tweet, and I disagreed with the sentiment, and I thought it was wrong. Likewise, Counselor to the President Hope Hicks text a colleague that evening, quote, attacking the VP? WTF. What the F is wrong with him? Same thing that's always been wrong with him that you've been ignoring. At 2:26 p.m., Vice President Pence was again moved to a different location. President Trump had the TV on in the dining room. At 2:38 p.m., Fox News was showing video of the chaos and attack with tear gas filling the air in the Capitol Rotunda. And a newscaster reported, quote, this is a very dangerous situation, unquote. This is the context in which Trump sent the tweet. Testimony obtained by the committee indicates that President Trump knew about the rioters, their anger at President Pence, and indicated something to the effect that the vice president, quote unquote, deserves it, as Cassidy Hutchinson explained. I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, quote, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung, unquote. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, quote, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. To which Pat said something, that is effing crazy. We need to be doing something more. Briefly stepped into Mark's office, and when Mark had said something to the effect of, he doesn't think they're doing anything wrong, unquote. Knowing what I had heard briefly in the dining room, coupled with Pat discussing the hanging Mike Pence chants in the lobby of our office, and then Mark's response, I understood, quote, there to be the rioters in the Capitol, when he said they are not doing anything wrong. He's talking about the rioters in the Capitol that were chanting for the vice president to be hung. Although White House counsel Pat Cipollone was limited in what he would discuss because of privilege concerns, he stated the following. Committee staff, do you remember any discussion at any point during the day about rioters at the Capitol chanting "Hang Mike Pence"? Cephalon: yes, I remember. I remember hearing that. About that. Yes. Committee staff: yeah, and? Cephalon: I don't know. If I observed that myself on TV, I don't remember. Committee staff: I'm just curious. I understand the privilege line you've drawn, but do you remember what you can share with us about the discussion about those chants, the Hang Mike Pence chants? Cephalon: I could tell you my view of that. Committee staff: yeah, please. Cephalon: my view of that is that it's outrageous. My view is that it is outrageous. Committee, let me read what was there. My view of that is that is outrageous. Committee staff: Cephalon: and for anyone to suggest such a thing as the Vice President of the United States, for people in that crowd to be chanting, that I thought was terrible. That I thought was terrible. I thought it was outrageous and wrong. And I expressed that very clearly to people. Almost immediately after the 2:24 p.m. tweet, Eric Hirschman went upstairs in the West Wing to try to enlist Ivanka Trump's assistant to persuade her father to do the right thing. Ivanka rushed down to the Oval Office dining room. Although no one could convince President Trump to call for the violent rioters to leave the Capitol, Ivanka persuaded President Trump that a tweet could be issued to discourage violence against the police. At 2:38 p.m., President Trump sent this tweet, quote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." While some in the meeting invoked executive privilege or failed to recall the specifics, others told us what happened at that point. Sarah Matthews, the White House Deputy Press Secretary, had urged her boss, Kayleigh McEnany, to have the president make a stronger statement, but she informed us that the president resisted using the word, quote unquote, peaceful in his message. Committee staff: Ms. Matthews, Ms. McEnany told us she came right back to the press office after meeting with the president about this particular tweet. What did she tell you about what happened in that dining room? Ms. Matthews: when she got back, she told me that a tweet had been sent out, and I told her that I thought the tweet did not go far enough, that I thought there needed to be a call to action and he needed to condemn the violence. And we were in a room full of people, but people weren't paying attention. And so she looked directly at me and in a hushed tone shared with me that the president did not want to include any sort of mention of peace in that tweet, and that it took some convincing on their part. Those who were in the room, and she said that there was a back and forth going over different phrases to find something that he was comfortable with. And it wasn't until Ivanka Trump suggested the phrase "stay peaceful" that he finally agreed to include it. President Trump sent another tweet, but again declined to tell people to go home. I am asking for everyone at the, quote, I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. Almost everyone, including staff in the White House, also found the president's 2:38 p.m. and 3:13 p.m. tweets to be insufficient because they did not instruct the rioters to leave the Capitol. As mentioned, President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., texted Meadows. He's got to condemn this boo-boo ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough. Sean Hannity also texted Mark Meadows. Can he make a statement? I saw the tweet. Ask people to peacefully leave the Capitol. None of these efforts resulted in President Trump immediately issuing the message that was needed. White House staff had these comments. Pottinger. Yeah, it was Mr. Pottinger, I guess that's his name. It was insufficient. I think what you could count me among those who was hoping to see an unequivocal, strong statement clearing out the Capitol, telling people to stand down, leave, go home. I think that's what we were hoping for. You lying. You couldn't have been hoping for that after that ellipse speech. You couldn't have been hoping for that after that invitation that he sent out talking about come to be there, come to Washington on January 6th. It will be wild. So how could you hope that he was going to tell them to be peaceful? Matthews said, yeah. So a conversation started in the press office after the president sent out those two tweets that I deemed were insufficient. I thought that we should condemn the violence and condemn it unequivocally. And I thought that he didn't, that he needed to include a call to action and to tell these people to go home. And they were right. And they were right. Evidence showed that neither of these tweets had any appreciable impact on the violent rioters until the video message tweet that did not come until 4:17, finally instructing rioters to leave. Neither the 2:38 nor the 3:13 tweets made any difference. At some point after 3:05 p.m. that afternoon, President Trump's chief of staff and President Trump himself were informed that someone had been shot. That person was Ashley Babbitt, who was fatally shot at 2:44 p.m. as she and other rioters tried to gain access to the House chamber. There is no indication that this affected the president's state of mind that day, and we found no evidence that the president expressed any remorse that day. Meanwhile, leaders in Congress, including Speaker Pelosi, Senator Schumer, Senator McConnell, and the Vice President, were taking action. They called the Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, governors and officials in Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, begging for assistance. President-elect Biden also broadcast a video calling on President Trump to take action. I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege. President Trump could have done this, of course, any time after he learned of the violence at the Capitol at 4:17 p.m., 187 minutes after finishing his speech, and even longer after the attack began, President Trump finally broadcast a video message in which he asked those attacking the Capitol to leave. We'll put a pin in it right there. That low-down dog. Anyway, I'm going to, did any of you have something you wanted to ask me? I want to say this to you, and you had better remember it. Matter of fact, I want to read it to you. Because this is something that many of you have missed. You seem to think that Allah is weak and is incapable of anger and is incapable of vengeance. Turn to the 3rd chapter of Genesis. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. Now, I want you to understand, Allah made religion. And we made the Bible. We made the Holy Quran. Now I want to show you something here. I like to try to seem like all of mine. Give me a minute. Sometimes I go through here online and find something misprinted, and I correct it, but I haven't been through it all, so I can't correct it. That stops me from being able to find things that I need because they have it misprinted in here. But anyway, I'll find it later, but just give me a minute here. Now look what it says. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. He's more subtle than any beast of the field. But he's not more subtle than his maker. In the Holy Quran, in the 33rd chapter, turn to it. And I'm going to go to the 34th verse. It says, and remember that which is recited in your houses of the messages of Allah, and the wisdom, meaning the instruction. Surely Allah is ever knower of subtleties. Huh? You know, a thing that is subtle is something that is barely distinguishable. Let's see here. subtil, subtle. So does will not. Wait a minute. Put this thing down here. Somebody changed the deal in the language in my dictionary here. But anyway, I'll get Brother Michael. You can come up here and get this back like it's supposed to be for me. I'm looking at. Coming up in German. I don't know what this is about. Anyway. But remember, we made the devil. You seem to think that you got something that we don't have in us. You're going to find out you was wrong. You better go look at the Matrix again. Smith, it finally dawned on him at the end that he didn't have nothing that he didn't get from Neo. Do you understand? Many nations before you as an individual thought that they could stand and contend with God and fight him with his own weapons. And he destroyed them. So your little individual attacks and calling yourself going to stand against us, you go ahead. You're not the first ones who tried that. Okay. Now I'll let you go, since nobody have any questions or statements. May Allah bless us and keep us safe and in our right minds. May Allah's Salam Alaikum. Come up here, Brother Michael.